Thank you so much for being on the programme today.
Pleasure.
I can see you brought the manifesto with you. It's not a serious manifesto, though, isn't it, for a party that really thinks it's going to be in government. This is a manifesto that's designed to influence the political weather, to steal votes off the Conservatives. Sure. That's right, isn't it?
I mean, I think we've been really clear. This is a 6-year project, and Nigel has been clear about that. But also, we're doing things rather differently. We're an insurgent party. We're building this from the ground up. And actually, the sense of excitement around the country is palpable. And certainly, if you go to Clacton, when Nigel made that first speech, people were hanging off bridges, people were crowding around. When I go around the country, people are thrilled and say stuff like, well, it's, you know, we're absolutely delighted you're here. That's really good for politics, actually, that people are engaged. And when we look at who actually is keen on our party, we're winning amongst 18 to 24-year-olds. We're also winning
Winning amongst... What does that mean?
So it means
Labour are...
Well, it appears that we have a huge traction from 18 to 24-year-olds.
Not winning, though, are you?
Well, I'd like to say winning. Yeah. Over 55s and also women as well. So it's going to be very interesting to see how this plays out. But look, when we started this, 3 years ago, we were at 2%. We're now on 19. Okay. That is an extraordinary feat.
Clearly, it's a growing party. I take your point there. But my question is that this is not a serious manifesto for a party that might be in government. And I think this chart that Ed Conway, our data and economics editor, I guess illustrates a bit more what I was trying to say. So the manifesto spending pledges compared, you can see there, this is effectively the spending and the tax, so the giveaway that each party is giving. You know, the Greens are right up there and Reform are right up there.
Indeed.
I mean, those are the two parties that aren't going to be in power, so you're not going to have to try and make these sums add up.
So it's been really interesting, actually, and when you look at the way we've costed this, and this is at the back of this, that we've had people like 2 former deputy governors of the Bank of England saying, we like what you're saying. The fact is, we say that, as you can see in that 35 billion coming from QE, changing the way that we pay that interest.
But people say it's not going to be 35 billion, don't they? That's the whole
They do,
point.
but there again, I defer. I'm not an economist. I defer to people who are far cleverer in that.
But you admit people are saying that it's not...
But there are economics editors who say that actually it is right. So again, this is a conversation to be had. When you look at net zero, that's a saving of 30 billion. We believe there are government efficiencies of 50 billion, halving foreign aid, which brings it down to 6 billion. So we have actually costed it. But for me, the most important thing here is that it's not the same old dogma. There is actually drive and passion and vision, and that is really what we're setting out.
I mean, I guess as well, you know, it's not just about the numbers. It's about, you know, you're promising some things that seem to me to be genuinely kind of impossible. I mean, like leaving the ECHR in the first 100 days. I mean, you need to give 6 months' notice for a start. NHS waiting lists at 0. Net migration at 0. I mean, these things just don't pass the smell test. You know, what are you going to promise me? England winning the Euros and me having a date with George Clooney? I mean,
well, maybe.
You know, it's not realistic.
No, well, I mean, there's a lot...
Maybe it's not.
There's a lot in that question. But so, for example, if you look at the health service, obviously I'm a doctor, I wrote that policy. The fact is that we're spending £176 billion a year, at 11.7% of GDP, on the NHS. And there's this mantra, a dogma, oh, it's a world-leading service. It isn't. 380,000 people didn't even start their cancer treatment in the appropriate time. That's unacceptable. 20 million people on waiting lists. What we're saying is actually it is not OK to wait, and we believe that we can get to 0 waiting lists. It will take time, I admit that, but there are a number of ways we can do that by keeping staff in the service, actually incentivising them to stay in the service, making sure that we pay back student debt if you stay in the health service for 10 years, and also the enlargement of the private sector. At the end of the day, for me, as long as patients get treatment, it doesn't matter where it comes from, but the money follows the patient and it remains free at the point of need.
The other part of your manifesto that I was quite interested in was the family section. Your manifesto commitments on the family. So you want to support marriage, the tax system. You want to make it easier for parents to stay at home to look after their children by front-loading child benefit to age 1 to 4. Just what's the reason behind that? What's the belief?
Well, we believe that children do better in stable relationships across the board, and actually we need to encourage that.
In marriage, you think?
In marriage, you know, and that marriage is an important bond, isn't it? Because I think what children desperately need is someone at home, and they need someone to be there and support them during their education. So we think that's a cornerstone, actually. And one of the things that I find really strange and very difficult to understand is the disconnect that children now have, because they have, when you come home at night, you want to be able to offload what's been going on at school, and you need someone at home to be able to do that. And if we can incentivise that through tax breaks or whatever it is, that has to be a good thing.
So you say that children do better with one parent at home. So you think basically if you're a child with 2 working parents, that's not a great upbringing for you.
No, I'm saying, of course it's incredibly difficult and parents have to work because of the cost of living. But actually the ideal would be to have a parent that is there available when children need them.
And do you think that children, I guess, are damaged if, that doesn't happen?
Well, I think the biggest damage that's happened has been the lockdown due to COVID and the government's policy on that. There was no need to do anything more than one lockdown.
Because I think it's really, really interesting, this here. So you say in the manifesto that the majority of mothers would choose to stay at home more if they could. What's the research on that?
So we polled extensively, actually, but I think if you talk to any mother, of course they want to spend time with their children. They want to see them grow and develop. And if you're spending all your time at work and you don't have enough time with your kids, I think that's a travesty.
You think it's a travesty, yeah? And do you think it damages the children as well?
I think emotionally, children need support as they grow and develop. There are lots of questions they have. You have to look at why children are now so obsessed with social media, and certainly from the point of view of having nephews and nieces, they're being told all sorts of stuff on social media that needs correcting immediately. One of the biggest things we've seen is the rise of anorexia and bulimia in young women and in young boys as well.
And what do you think that might be because you don't have parents at home?
Well, I think actually the parents are there and they need to counter some of the myths that are on social media. These are not realistic images.
Do you think it matters if it's a mum or a dad, or someone who's a gay parent? It doesn't matter at all. Just one parent should be at home with their kids.
Well, I think
in an ideal.
Well, in an ideal world, I think stability and support from whichever parent can do that, or indeed one parent one day, another parent the other day, is the ideal. And if we can encourage that, that's great.
Your manifesto also says Britain's got one of the highest family breakdown rates in the Western world, and you talk about children being born to unmarried couples. Half of all children grow up in separate households. We have the unhappiest teenagers in Europe. Do you think that divorce and sort of separation, I guess, has a devastating impact on children?
Well, I mean, look, if the marriage is that difficult, then obviously it is important that the parents split amicably. But for children, I just go back to the point that we know that children do better when they have a stable parenting, when they actually feel loved and supported. And that's about actually academic need, but also emotional need. And I think we're seeing a real breakdown in that, because I think children have been left to their own devices. Certainly, I was very fortunate. I had a great upbringing. My parents didn't have a great deal, but they gave us time, and that's really important.
Obviously, no one goes into a relationship wanting to split up, right? And you touch upon that in your answer as well, that there are reasons, abusive relationships, for example, that people leave. I mean, I guess, in the past, people did just stay together often and make themselves deeply unhappy, and that's not always a great place for children either. Is it just another way of making parents feel a bit bad about themselves? You have to work, you've had a family breakdown. They might be listening to you right now thinking, that just feel pretty rubbish as a parent.
No, I'm not saying that at all, as you know. I mean, I'm saying that if obviously you can't live together and if you want to get divorced, then that's obviously is something that you have to take upon yourself. But what I do think is actually that children, it's really complicated growing up, and you have a lot of pressures on you, whether it's through social media, it's the educational attainment. Also, we know that kids do better at home when there's a parent there and there's some form of stability at home, but also to be there to be able to help with homework, for example. And that's really important.
I want to talk a bit about the election now. Reform's chances at the election. You're standing, I think you said 620
We are,
seats,
yes.
so it's about 30 seats Reform aren't standing in. If you're in one of those seats, who should you vote for?
Well, obviously, Reform.
No, but you haven't got.
Oh, I see. If you haven't, that's a very good question.
Who'd you go for?
The least worst option, I should think.
Yeah, who's that then? Who's the least worst option?
Or don't vote. If none of them actually appeal to you, don't vote.
So
but the really important thing is you have to vote. People died for the ability to vote, so I'm really keen that people do vote and they spoil their ballot paper. But look, the Conservatives are saying, oh, well, you can't vote for Reform because it lets Labour in. Well, actually, the Conservatives will let Labour in, and I would argue that actually a vote for the Conservatives lets Labour in. So vote for us. And actually, we know Labour is going to win this election, so why don't you actually follow your convictions and vote for us?
I'm going to pin you down. How many seats is Reform going to win? Go on. What do you reckon?
So when we started this campaign, we thought 1 would be a great triumph. We're 3 years old, right? 2 we then thought would be really good. We're now being predicted in the MRP poll to have 7. Well, that would be extraordinary, wouldn't it, for a party that's
So what, you're going to go for 7 then?
Is
that what you're going to go for?
Look, I'm not a betting man, but our candidates are doing really brilliantly.
Come on.
Well,
you're the straight talkers, come on.
No, I am. I'm saying anywhere between 3 and 7 would be marvellous.
All right, thank you